Where did the first Slavs come from? Who were they? And where did they disappear? How did this warlike Slavic civilization emerge in Eastern Europe? And how did it withstand the aggressive military expansion of Anglo-Saxon crusaders from Western Europe? Which peoples of Eastern Europe inherited the Slavic military spirit and culture that could not be broken by centuries of crusades and raids? Which peoples were the first Slavs, and what contribution did they make to world history? But before we begin our story, be sure to subscribe to Epic Frontiers, then leave a comment and tell us, what powerful medieval Slavic states do you know? Now, let's travel back to the past and uncover the secrets of the Slavic civilization. In March 1147, the Diet of the Holy Roman Empire gathered in Germany. Its primary focus was the organization of the Second Crusade to the Holy Land, where King Conrad III had departed a year earlier. However, the Saxon princes put forward a counter-proposal. Their leaders, Duke Henry the Lion and Margrave Albert the Bear, declared that they could not abandon their eastern borders, which were threatened by pagan tribes of Polabian Slavs. Instead of Palestine, they proposed directing the crusading host against their neighbors living between the Elbe and the Oder. The proposal was approved by spiritual authorities, including Pope Eugene III and the influential Abbot Bernard of Clairvaux. On April 11, 1147, a papal bull officially equated the campaign against the Western Slavs with the Crusades to the east, promising participants the same indulgence for their sins. Thus, in the very heart of Europe, a military campaign began that was formally considered a crusade but was, in essence, a continuation of the centuries-long eastward expansion of German feudal lords. This Forgotten Crusade is rarely highlighted and remains in the shadow of the campaign to the Middle East, yet it held fateful significance for the peoples of Central and Eastern Europe. This crusade to the east prepared the staging ground for subsequent 13th century expansion into Prussia, Samogitia, Novgorod, and Pskov, as well as the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. All these territories were targeted for conquest and subsequent Germanization. The Western or Polabian Slavs are considered true Slavs in the literal sense of the word. These were Western Baltic tribes living in the territory of modern-day northeastern Germany who, together with Vikings from Scandinavia, conducted military campaigns into Europe and established the ancient centers of Rus, Novgorod, Polotsk, Smolensk, Chernigov, and Kiev, located on the trade route from the Varangians to the Greeks. The Slavic languages of Polabia emerged from the blending of the Viking language and Western Baltic. It was these peoples who brought Slavic languages and culture to the peoples of Eastern Europe. The union of the Polabian Slavs and Scandinavian Vikings. This is what Rus is. By the mid-12th century, the Polabian Slavs did not constitute a unified entity. The region was divided into several tribal confederations, often at odds with one another. In the northwest, along the shores of the Baltic Sea, lay the territories of the Obotrites. Their primary political center was the Mecklenburg fortress. The ruler of the Obotrites, Prince Niklot, maintained complex but generally allied relations with the neighboring Saxon Count Adolf of Holstein, and even with Henry the Lion himself. It is believed that Rurik, together with Obotrite Slavic colonists, founded ancient Novgorod. To the south lived the Velidi, Ludicai, the most warlike and independent confederation of tribes, who resisted Christianization the longest. Their territories stretched to the Havel River. It was the Velidi who, following the German expansion, fled to the territory of modern-day Western Belarus and brought with them the ethnonym Lutva or Litva, which the Western Baltic tribes of Yatvingians and Danavians adopted as their self-designation. Subsequently, in the mid-13th century, the Litvins, ancestors of modern-day Belarusians, founded the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Further east were the Pomeranians, and at the mouth of the Oder lay the independent Duchy of Szczecin. A special place was occupied by the island of Ryan, modern-day Ruggen. This was not only a political center, but the primary religious hub of all West Slavic paganism. In the Arkona fortress on the northern tip of Ruggen stood the largest sanctuary of the god Svenevit. The priests of Arkona held immense authority, and the fortress itself was considered impregnable. The Crusade of 1147 did not emerge from a vacuum. It was preceded by decades of border conflicts and shifting demographics. Since the 10th century, German feudal lords, primarily Saxons, had consistently advanced eastward, establishing marches, frontier provinces, on Slavic lands. This process, known as the Ostsiedlung drive to the east, combined military pressure, colonization, and missionary activity. Simultaneously, pressure from Denmark was mounting. Danish kings, whose eastern territories regularly suffered from raids by Slavic pirates, sought to establish themselves on the southern coast of the Baltic. For them, the campaign of 1147 was an opportunity to resolve a long-standing security issue and expand their domains. In the summer of 1147, the crusading forces split into two main armies. The larger host, commanded by Margrave Albert the Bear, the founder of the future March of Brandenburg, also included Polish contingents under Duke Boleslaw the Curly and moved northeast against the Velidi and Pomeranians. This force was a typical feudal army of that era, assembled on the principle of vassal loyalty. Heavily armed knights, foot sergeants, light cavalry, and baggage train attendants. According to the Annals of Magdeburg, their numbers could have reached 10,000 to 12,000 men, which was a very significant force for a local conflict at that time. After passing through Havelberg, the Crusaders devastated the Slavic sanctuary in Malchow, an important religious center where the idol of the god Radgast, the patron of war and hospitality, stood. The destruction of the shrine was not only religious but deeply psychological. It was intended to demonstrate the impotence of pagan gods in the face of Christ. They then besieged the fortified city of Demmin, a strategic hub at a crossroads of trade routes. Following the capture of Demmin, which was accompanied by the massacre of part of the population, the army moved towards Stettin, modern-day Szczecin, the largest city in Pomerania and a key port on the Oder. The siege of Stettin, however, failed. The city had a mixed population, part of which already practiced Christianity due to the missionary work of Otto of Bamberg in the early 12th century. Negotiations between the German bishops, Anselm of Havelberg and Wibold of Corvey, and the city authorities, led by a local ruler of the Griffin dynasty, resulted in the lifting of the siege. Moreover, in 1148, the Pomeranian Duke Radibor I even swore a formal oath of allegiance to the emperor, agreeing to pay tribute and allow missionaries entry. This episode revealed a deep rift in the Slavic world. Not all rulers were ready to fight to the end. Many prefer to deal with the stronger side to retain at least some power and autonomy. Simultaneously, the army of the Duke of Saxony, Henry the Lion, operated in the northwest against the Obotrite Confederation. Their prince, Niklot, an experienced ruler and warrior whose domains stretched from the Trave River to the Warnow, learned of the preparations and launched a daring preemptive strike. He understood that in an open field battle, his infantry levies and light cavalry could not stand against knights clad in steel. On June 26, 1147, his fleet, consisting of traditional Slavic longships, suddenly attacked and burned the city of Lübeck, a new but strategically vital trading post founded by Count Adolf of Holstein just 12 years prior. Obotrite cavalry ravaged the surrounding settlements, driving off livestock and taking captives. This tactical success had fateful propaganda consequences. In German chronicles, such as the work of Helmold of Bosaw, it was portrayed not as an act of desperation and military necessity, but as a treacherous and cunning pagan assault on a peaceful Christian city, which fully justified any retaliatory actions by the Crusaders. After 1147, the center of the prolonged conflict shifted from the mainland to the island of Rügen, the sacred heart of Slavic paganism, which the Danes began to methodically attack. The first major Danish campaign in 1159, undertaken by King Valdemar I the Great, ended in catastrophic failure. His fleet of approximately 260 ships, drakers and nars, was caught in a violent storm in the Baltic Sea, and only about 60 battered vessels reached the island. Risking no assault on the impregnable Arkona with such weakened forces, the Danes limited themselves to plundering the coast in the Barth region on the mainland. On their return journey, their stretched-out fleet was intercepted by the Rians in the narrow and treacherous strait between Rügen and the mainland. In the ensuing naval battle, where the maneuverability and knowledge of the waters by the Rians played a decisive role, the Danes suffered heavy losses. Only 7 ships survived and managed to break through back home. This defeat for a long time discouraged the Danes from direct attacks. Following this, King Valdemar and his chief advisor, the warlike Bishop Absalon, fundamentally changed their strategy. Instead of rare, risky, large-scale expeditions, they began conducting frequent, almost annual systematic raids with smaller but mobile forces. These operations, the first of which was personally led by Absalon in 1160, pursued specific economic goals: the destruction of crops, the driving off of livestock, the plundering of villages, and the kidnapping of the population to be sold into slavery. Particular attention was paid to operations during the harvest season to maximally deprive the island of food supplies and undermine its economy. This was a classic strategy of attrition designed for long-term results. Such ruthless tactics gradually but surely eroded the economy and morale of Rian. The island, stripped of resources and surrounded by the enemy, was slowly dying. Prince Tetislav of the Rians was forced to enter into humiliating negotiations and even sent a hostage to the court of the Danish king as a sign of submission. By the mid-1160s, the once formidable Rian found itself in a state of de facto economic blockade and political isolation, especially after Henry the Lion made peace with the Pomeranian princes in 1167, depriving the Rians of their last potential allies on the mainland. Meanwhile, on the mainland, the final dramatic phase of the struggle for Slavic independence was unfolding. In 1160, the combined forces of Henry the Lion and Valdemar I launched a decisive, coordinated offensive against the Obotrites, implementing a pincer movement strategy. Prince Niklot, soberly assessing the balance of power, employed a tragic scorched earth policy. He ordered the destruction of his own major administrative and craft centers, Schwerin, Mecklenburg, Illo, and Dobin, so they would not fall to the enemy as ready-made strongpoints and supply bases. He himself, with the core of his retinue and his most loyal warriors, retreated to the inaccessible, well-fortified forest fortress of Worrell on the Warnow River. From there, he began a grueling guerrilla war, conducting swift and daring sorties against supply lines and isolated detachments of the besiegers. In the winter of 1160, during one of the risky sorties to secure food for the starving garrison, Niklot's detachment fell into a carefully prepared ambush set by the knights of Count Gunzelin von Hagen, a vassal of Henry the Lion. In the fierce struggle, the last independent prince of the Obotrites fell, fighting until his final breath. His death became the turning point that broke the organized resistance of the Obotrites. Niklot's sons, Pribislav and Vardislav, continued the struggle, launching a major, desperate uprising in 1164. Seizing the moment, they even managed to temporarily capture the important city of Magdeburg. However, on July 6, 1164, in the decisive Battle of Virchin on the northeastern shore of Lake Kumaro, their army, distracted by plundering an abandoned German camp, lost its formation and was utterly routed by a sudden and fierce counterattack of heavy knightly cavalry under the command of Gunzelin of Schwerin and Count Christian of Oldenburg. Vardislav was captured in battle and executed in Schwerin by order of Henry the Lion. After several years of bitter exile in Pomerania, Pribislav was forced to recognize himself as a vassal of Henry the Lion in 1167. In return, he received back a portion of his father's domains, but no longer as a hereditary prince, rather as a feudal lord of the Saxon duke, bound by military service. His title gradually transformed from Prince of the Obotrites to Count of Mecklenburg. Thus ended the political independence of the region's most powerful and organized Slavic tribal confederation. Only the last symbolic stronghold remained, the sacred island of Rian. In June 1168, a combined Danish-Saxon army, estimated by various chroniclers to number between 20,000 and 30,000 warriors, including foot connects, Danish housecarls, Saxon knights, and mercenary archers, landed on the island and besieged Arkona. It was commanded by King Valdemar I and Bishop Absalon. The fortress possessed unique defensive structures, a triple arc-shaped rampart made of wood reaching heights of 10 to 12 meters, fronted by a deep, water-filled moat. According to the chronicles, the garrison consisted of a core of approximately 300 professional Vityaz warriors, the elite retinue of the priests of Svenovid, reinforced by several hundred militiamen and residents who had taken refuge behind the walls. The siege lasted several days and was incredibly bloody. The attackers moved against the ramparts in waves, suffering monstrous losses from arrows, stones, and logs hurled down by the defenders. As was often the case in medieval sieges, the use of fire proved decisive. On June 16, 1168, using siege engines, the Crusaders managed to bombard the wooden fortifications and the main gate towers with incendiary projectiles. The fire, fanned by the sea breeze, spread rapidly to the inner buildings, including the central temple of Svinivit and its famous four-faced idol covered in gold. Legend has it that the last defenders of the sanctuary refused to surrender, choosing instead to perish in the cleansing flames alongside their god. The temple was completely destroyed, and its legendary riches, ritual utensils, weapons, and pilgrims' offerings were confiscated. The chronicles specifically mention 7 massive chests of treasure that were personally removed by King Valdemar and became part of the Danish royal treasury. The political consequences were swift and irreversible. Prince Jaromar of the Ruins, who had watched the siege with his army of 6,000 from a camp near the Carenza fortress but never came to the aid of the doomed Arcona, surrendered to the victors almost immediately. He received baptism at the hands of Bishop Absalon and recognized himself as Valdemar's vassal. The active construction of Christian churches began on the island, the first of which was erected on the very site of the destroyed sanctuary of Svinivit. In the following years, Prince Jaromar, now a Christian vassal, personally led the Christianization process, founding, among other things, the monastery of St. Mary in Bergen, now the main city of Rügen. The conquest and baptism of Rien in 1168 served as the final chord, a symbol of the ultimate military, political, and spiritual fall of Slavic civilization in the southern Baltic. The memory of gods like Svinivit survived only in the chronicles of the victors and the toponymy of the conquered land. The fall of Arcona in 1168 is considered the symbolic end of the era of the independent Polabian Slavs. However, the actual process of their integration into the German and Danish feudal systems spanned centuries. In the conquered lands, a systematic German colonization of the Polabian Slavs began, whose descendants now reside in the territory of modern-day Eastern Germany. The Slavic nobility gradually integrated into the ruling class, adopting the language, religion, and customs of the victors. For example, the descendants of Prince Pribislav became the founders of a dynasty that ruled in Mecklenburg until 1918. The local Slavic population either assimilated or, while maintaining their language and customs, occupied lower social positions. The process of Germanization accelerated between the 13th and 15th centuries with the founding of numerous German cities under Magdeburg rights and the influx of new settlers. The region's Slavic past has been preserved primarily in toponymy and archaeology. Many centers and geographic landmarks in eastern Germany bear names of Slavic origin. Brandebor became Brandenburg, Lipsk became Leipzig, and Dresden became Dresden. Settlements like Rostock, Wismar, and Schwerin, as well as the rivers Havel, Spree, and Peene, retained their Slavic names. Linguistic traces vanished more slowly. Isolated groups speaking the Polabian language persisted in some areas of Mecklenburg and the Hanoverian Wendland until the 18th century. The last native speaker died around 1756. The Wendish Crusade of 1147 and the 2 decades of war that followed were not an isolated event. They were the culmination of a long process of expansion that combined religious, economic, and political motives. Unlike the Crusades to the Middle East, this campaign achieved its goals. The Slavic tribes were subdued, their territories colonized, and their pagan religion destroyed. However, the price was high. An entire cultural political system vanished, and the ethnic map of Central Europe was changed forever. The history of the Polabian Slavs remains an example of how issues of coexistence between different peoples and religions were resolved in medieval Europe, not through dialogue, but through conquest and assimilation. Their legacy, though erased from the political map, lives on in geographic names and archaeological finds, silent witnesses to a world that vanished 8.5 centuries ago. The Slavic culture and language of the disappeared Polabian Slavs found their worthy continuation in the countries of Eastern Europe, which created their own powerful states, having withstood the struggle for independence against the European warriors of the Cross. If you enjoyed our excursion into history, please give us a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and see you soon.